My name is Jessica Ricker, and it's my honor to be a part of the admissions and financial aid team at Skidmore College and to serve as Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid. I'm really excited to welcome you to our Creative Thought Works series, where we aim to amplify Skidmore outcomes through monthly themed panels that reach a large audience of prospective students across the globe and around the world, and that introduce our alums and the amazing things that they are doing.
So I'm Adam. I went to Skidmore, graduated from Skidmore in 2016. I'm currently a software engineer at Google, but I've kind of done a couple things here and there across the years. I was a mathematics and computer science double major. The computer science double part of that came later because it's a requirement for the math major, and then here I am now. So, and I'm also a big nerd, if you can't tell from behind me. So got all sorts of hobbies. I like to dabble in making board games and things like that.
That is fabulous. We embrace everybody's inner nerd, right? Creative thought matters also means that creative thought of all kinds is valued. So let's embrace all of that. So David, you are next. Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's David. I graduated from Skidmore in 2018. I studied biochemistry, and I'm currently in the Boston area. I work for a company called Black Earth Compost, and I'm the growth and operations manager. So kind of a different path than a lot of science majors, but excited to talk a little bit more about it and to be a part of this event.
Making something out of nothing. And having lived in the Boston area previously, I mean, Black Earth is really the thing. I mean, you all are doing some really great things. And I know we're all excited to hear more about that. And then Madeline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Madeline. I graduated in 2013 from Skidmore as a neuroscience major. I was also a member of the national champion riding team. I'll just give them a quick shout out. That was a big draw for me to Skidmore, and it's also been a great way for me to stay connected to the school. It's been a really good network for me. After Skidmore, I stayed close to the Capital District. I lived in Saratoga for a few years still. I worked at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, which back then was a pretty small company of about 400, 500 people. Then COVID hit and it's been all over the news, and now we're well into the 10 or 12 thousands of people. So I worked there for a couple of years. I went to RPI for graduate school, got my PhD, then went back to Regeneron, and I've been there in my new position there for about 3 years.
Yeah, and Regeneron is set to open a new facility actually in the greater Saratoga Springs area. I mean, the pandemic changed so much in our world, but it's created some cool opportunities. And the capital region has so much, for those of you who aren't as familiar with Albany, right? Everyone loves New York City, but you know, Albany is the capital of New York. And the capital region has so much going on, but the pandemic has created some opportunities in spaces that are outside of the typical, you know, metropolitan regions. So we're excited to have more from Regeneron in the area. So, okay, so here's what we're really here for, right? You know, at Skidmore, we really believe that creative thought matters. It informs everything that we do at Skidmore. And it's a huge distinction from other liberal arts colleges. And we created the series, Creative Thought Matters, to help prospective students and their families understand this difference. So, you know, the question I'm going to throw at you first is, how did this sort of concept of creative thought matters, right? How did this influence your experience at Skidmore? How did it resonate with you? And how did it prepare you for what you're doing right now? So I'm gonna look in the Zoom room, look at your eyeballs, and see if anybody's leaning in to go first. Or I'll wait for someone to come off mute first.
Well, I went last time, so I guess I'll go first this time.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I always thought creative thought matters was a really great motto for Skidmore, because I never really thought of myself as a creative person, but as I learned more about creative thought matters and went to Skidmore, which does have a great arts program and you meet a lot of creative people there, I realized how creative thought matters is not just about, say, creating paintings or your traditional forms of art. It's really about a lifestyle. So one way I found this is that creative thought matters is so important for everything. Like nothing ever goes exactly as planned. So you generally have to be creative in your solutions and your adaptations to things as you keep going. And that type of mentality also helps you think on your feet, because once you start working on creative solutions, then then you're more willing to try new things and work outside of your box. It also builds an innovative mindset, which I found something to be really important in the workforce, because innovation is really everything to companies. Companies are always looking to improve, especially in my position at Regeneron. We have to come up with a continuous improvement idea every year for the company. So that's where creative thought matters has really come into play in my position, because instead of just thinking of everything as status quo, I get to think a little creatively on a way where I can improve and come up with one every year. I've also found it's important for creating or picking a major and a career, because people are complicated. We don't fit into tiny little boxes. You might find one class interesting, but then something in a totally different major, that class interesting. So combine some things, try some things. You don't have to stick into your straight line. You can veer out a little bit, get a little creative, have a little fun.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And I mean, who actually planned for a global pandemic, right? Like, I mean, it really forced everyone to adapt, to be resilient, right? And what you're talking about and pointing towards is certainly part of that. And then also ABCD, always be connecting the dots, right? Like always be looking for the next thought that builds upon it. So David or Adam, who would like to go next to kind of talk about how creative thought matters resonated in your Skidmore experience?
I can jump in. This will probably be, bear with me for a moment, given the opening I'm about to say. My friends and I did not really lean into the idea of CTM, Creative Thought Matters, when we learned about it. We kind of thought it was kind of funny. We're like, oh, it's this corny motto. And in an ironic twist of fate, we actually ended up exhibiting exactly the characteristics of Creative Thought Matters anytime we would invoke it. So we would be whatever, hanging out or doing whatever we were doing on campus, and we would always bring, oh, this is Creative Thought Matters. And in that sense, it was actually kind of a forged identity that I didn't expect out of that kind of thing. And clearly it was designed better than I even thought. So even someone like me who's very skeptical about these kinds of mottos, it actually did end up resonating with me. And then in terms of how it's affected how I've moved through the workplace and my life, creativity is king in the workplace. I found that you can be the kind of worker who follows what your boss says and you'll get rewarded, but oftentimes if you're able to come up with an idea that's one, good for the business, but two, more aligned with your interests, those are usually the opportunities that get you further ahead. So being able to see the box you're in and be like, well, is that actually a window over there? And going over there and opening it up and you're like, oh yeah, this room is better now. Those are the kinds of moments that are great in the workplace, great in personal life, and at Skidmore you would learn in spades.
Is it a box? Is it a window? You know, how does Schrodinger's cat actually get out of the box, right? But I actually, I think one of the things you have hearkened to, Adam, is that, it's about a receptivity. I mean, creativity also has an aspect of listening and understanding in there. When you talked about, understanding perhaps what a company might need instead of just doing precisely what your boss asks of you, that thinking more deeply and that critical thinking is clearly a part of it. David, take us home. How has this resonated in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So I think during my time at Skidmore, coming into Skidmore, coming out of high school, I knew I wanted to major in a science. And I too didn't view myself as a very creative individual. I was never good at art. I didn't really have an interest in writing creatively. And, you kind of put yourself in this mindset of, oh, science is clear, cut and dry, with no room for creativity. And I think, in pretty much every science class I took, that was proven wrong time and time again. Throughout the labs we did, the lectures we had, I think it's not only something the students embrace, but the professors also really make it a part of their lecturing style and their teaching style. So I think that really opened my mind more. And one of the things I most appreciate about my education is I got to try new things that didn't align with my major, and that were of interest to me. So instead of minoring, I took courses that I had an interest in, like documentary filmmaking and video game design. So I was able to explore areas that had no relation to my department or my major. And, my advisor was all for it. And I just was very encouraged from everyone. And I think that really left a lasting impact on me. And even, fast forward to today, and, the position I'm currently in is somewhere I never thought I'd be. I'm not in a hard science. I am in operations and product development. And I think without being open to creativity and change, I would have never found myself down this path, and I would have stayed more, just followed the stepping stones.
I mean, David, that is so insightful and interesting that it matches in some ways, almost Adam's resistance to, creative thought matters. It's just a catchy tagline, right? Versus, the way that creativity and the curiosity goes along with it. It's naturally inclusive. It's open, and it invites in different ideas, the questioning of ideas, a little bit of reticence in there. It invites in other, perspectives, and that's where it's both STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but also STEAM, right? So, I mean, none of the three panelists tonight necessarily directly connected an arts passion with their STEM interests, but science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, right? There's something about an art. It's not just it's an art and a science, right? Like what you're doing with Black Earth in terms of the development, et cetera, right? There is a little bit of both scientific experimentation, but also, artistry, right? And there are the human relational aspects. So I'll stop waxing, philosophical on you all. And so here's the second question. So, we believe that creative thought matters, but we also believe that creative thought works. And so, the admission team, when we meet, many of the young people, the students who are on the session tonight, we get questions about how, Skidmore prepares you for, these outcomes after you leave Saratoga Springs. So, what kinds of tools, whether that was research, internships, faculty membership, what things would you highlight that have allowed you to be successful in your time after college? And y'all have exhibited Skidmore kindness in great ways. So I'll let whoever wants to go first kind of lean in and get us started. So how does creative thought works? How has Skidmore prepared you?
I can jump back in. So I think, hindsight's 2020. I wish I had taken advantage of more programs that were offered to me. But that being said, I did take advantage of some of them. So I think, you know, first and foremost, the opportunity to start research as a sophomore. All of my friends who went to different schools started in their junior and senior year, and that really puts you, you know, further ahead of your peers. So that was a huge benefit. And I'm really grateful for my time in the lab. And then, you know, kind of a separate route, the CDC at Skidmore, the Career Development Center, they offer hundreds of useful resources and events. And even as an alum, I've came back to do mock interviews with students, and you know, they just have a lot of resources at your disposal. So like I said, hindsight's 2020, but
Well, that's why you're here tonight, giving this information. So it's not hindsight for others. Madeline and Adam.
I can jump in. So I'll highlight a couple things, but I think this one is less about the resources that Skidmore provides and more so about the people it brings together. I had a collection of friends that I don't think any one of us had the same major. So we really spanned the entire breadth of Skidmore. I had some really close friends in the dance department. I had friends in neuroscience. I had friends all like truly all over the place. And that has been super helpful for me just moving on from college and into different environments, because I've seen a lot of people who, let's say they went to like an engineering specific school, and they're not able to actually communicate as well to non-engineers and or to connect with them on just a personal level. And like when I'm at work, maybe it's annoying, none of you guys work with me, so you can't tell me otherwise, but I'll spend like the first 15-20 minutes of a 30-minute meeting just like catching up and hearing about people's stories and lives, because I think those are the kinds of connections that we talk about networking, but like networking is really about just like being a person to another person. And those were kind of the biggest tools I got from Skidmore. And then in terms of actual resources, I did the summer research once in the math department, or once in the chemistry department, once in the math department. They were both excellent. I was a summer tour guide, which was fun. And honestly, all three of those were just so I could hang out with my friends on campus during the summer. If you don't have an opportunity to be in Skidmore summer, you're missing out. Like it's a real treat. So and the nature. I haven't taken my partner yet to Northwoods, but it is on our list because that really holds a special place in my heart. So, and if any of you on the call don't know what Northwoods is, see if you can go look it up. Maybe there's a Google Maps walking tour or something.
I mean, Saratoga Springs is the place to be in the summer. A lot of students will spend at least one summer, right, during their time there. And you know, you're absolutely right? The summer research opportunities, and you know, to specifically have one that is targeted between the summer, between freshman and sophomore year, you know, is huge, right? And it's a really early start at getting those hands-on experiences. So Madeline, what would you add to the conversation? And I also see that some links have been thrown into the chat for those of you who are here live with Northwoods information, right? So Adam, ask and you shall receive both information on the Career Development Center and Northwoods. So, but Madeline, tell us a little bit more about how Creative Thought works.
Yeah. On the note of Northwoods, I still go there with my dog, so it's a great place. So Skidmore is lifelong, I would say, not just a 4-year experience. And Saratoga summers are truly amazing, but Saratoga winters also have their own special place. Like if you ever seen downtown Saratoga, like all lit up and decorated for the holidays, it is truly beautiful and magical. I try and get up there every year just to see that. But yes, back to the question. So Skidmore prepared me for life post-college in a few different ways. So the first I'll talk about is my major. As I mentioned, I was a neuroscience major and I went on to go to graduate school. So I never would have been able to survive graduate school without the base of science that I received at Skidmore. So I went for a biology degree for graduate school, but the Skidmore neuroscience program had enough biology. So I was able to thrive in a biology post-grad program, even though I wasn't actually a biology major. My graduate school work did include some neuroscience, so I also did use my neuroscience major there. And on that note, actually, neuroscience is kind of a rare major. So it was really cool that, and now it might be more prominent, but granted, this was over 10 years ago at this point. So it's really a unique opportunity that Skidmore does have such a large neuroscience program and offers those unique classes, because even sometimes now I'm filling out job applications or something and they don't have neuroscience as a major for undergrad in like the drop down. So I just put biology, which is not correct. So that was a pretty cool opportunity at Skidmore. I also took business classes at Skidmore and econ, which were obviously not within my major, but I also went on to study business at RPI as well. So that gave me a basis for for that path in my career. Also, I want to touch on the location of Skidmore. So as Jess mentioned earlier, Skidmore is obviously not in Manhattan. We are not in Manhattan, but it really doesn't need to be. Just because we're not the biggest city in the US doesn't mean there aren't a lot of opportunities in the Capital District. And I would say definitely take advantage of those. I got caught up a lot in the Skidmore bubble. I mostly stayed in Saratoga. I didn't even know Regeneron existed in my time at Skidmore, which is a big mistake because Regeneron offers a ton of internships, and it would have been a good idea for me to try and get one of those while I was a student. So there are, and I think local companies like to invest in local talent. So if you're at a school in the area, you're more likely to get a summer internship at a company in that area. So really draw upon the greater Capital District, go up to the Adirondacks. There's a ton that the immediate Capital District and the greater Capital District has to offer.
Totally, right? I wasn't fast enough coming off of mute, but when you're talking about how, right, a little bit smaller, Albany's not insignificant, doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities. I fully agree with what you just said, Madeline. And I think, the benefit there is that they are exactly as you said, they want to be able to create opportunities for students from the local area. And so that oftentimes means that the more significant experience where you're doing more meaningful work, right, is actually available to you, whereas it may not be, in a large city, or maybe it's something that's reserved for the grad students in the area. And that's certainly definitely not what students who are seeking experiences in our area are finding. So okay, so this all sounds amazing. We've agreed creative thought matters, it works. But for the students who are watching this session, right? They're 17, right? Like this is like this moment of thinking about moving away from home and exploring future possibilities. And I mean, y'all are being modest, but you're pretty successful. So, some of them may say like, how can I be that? How can I be that, 5, 10, 15 years from now? So take us back to your 17-year-old self. And what kind of, you started to give a little bit of advice, but what advice would you give? Or what kind of assurance would you give that an experience like Skidmore, can get you to Google, Regeneron, Black Earth, right? Like how can you help them see that path is really available without having to be like the only superstar in the room, right? Who gets the special experience. So
I'm going to jump in because I think I have a bit of a non-traditional application to Skidmore. So I didn't even want to go to college, and my family was like, you need to do that. So it was a whole process. I won't share the whole story, but essentially my grandma was like, oh, Skidmore sounds like fun. You should go there. And I didn't see any photos or anything. Very different person than who you're talking to today. And it was the very first time I saw Skidmore was literally on move-in day, and I was like, wow, this is stunning. Like, I'm so excited to be here. This is fantastic. And that kind of element of chaotic decision making and not knowing what I was going to do next is kind of my journey. After I finished Skidmore, uh, I didn't really know what to do, so I just applied to some teaching jobs in Tokyo, and then I got one, and I moved to Tokyo for a bit. And then when I was there, I was like, maybe grad school could be cool. So then I did that. It was a PhD program. It wasn't a right fit for me, so I left with a master's degree. And then I kind of jumped into the workforce 3 days before COVID hit. So that happened. And then I moved because I could now move easily because my partner was moving to Chicago. So I don't, I forgot what the nugget of wisdom or the moral is to that little set of stories. But basically, anyone who says, "Oh, I had it planned, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and here I am today," I would question that story because, at least for me, that has never been the case. And for most of the people that I know, it's kind of you make decisions at the time, and when we look back, we're like, "Oh, wow, that was a really good decision." But more often than not, in the moment, you're just kind of doing it by the seat of your pants.
Sometimes life happens. Sometimes you're called to Tokyo, right? Go with it, right? And sometimes your grandmother is right. For every grandmother who eventually watches this session, sometimes grandma is right.
If anyone, you guys should talk to your grandmas today. Just let that be your takeaway from me.
Yeah, everyone's journey is different. Okay, David and Madeline, wanna give some advice to your younger self, right? About how you land at this place?
Yeah, sure. You know, applying to schools, I knew what I wanted. I wanted a smaller school with more one-on-one with professors. So Skidmore fell into that category, and I applied to like 6 or 7 schools. Um, and I when I got into Skidmore, I didn't quite know what to make of it. And as soon as I visited and walked around the campus, that's what really sold it for me. It's tucked away just a mile from downtown. There's a ton of nature right there, like out your back door, literally. Um, Beautiful apartment buildings for the upperclassmen. Um, and I think like for me, it was really the like nature link, like being so close to nature, whereas a lot of other campuses were smack in the middle of a town or city. Um, so that's what really did it for me. And I think going into college, I was sure I wanted to be in healthcare in one aspect or another. I was an EMT. I worked with SCEMS, which was an awesome opportunity. That's Skidmore College EMS, where students can be EMTs on call. But you know, I think at 17, you think you know exactly where you're headed. Sometimes, like I did, but clearly that's not the case. And I think looking back, I would get so caught up in what am I going to do next? What if I don't have a job for a month? And now I'm finally at a place where you kind of find inner peace, and your work isn't defining of your entire life. So I think just following your passion, taking a leap of faith. I applied to Black Earth to drive a truck and pick up compost, and it was during COVID. I hated my remote job, and I said I got to do something different and physical and back in touch with nature and sustainability, and that's kind of what led me here. And I've been here 4 years. So I think following your gut, that's my best advice.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, I had a teacher once who said, planning is priceless, but planning is useless, right? Like you make these plans, but then you have to go with it, right? And I mean, you heard it here first, right? Creative thought matters also includes a willingness and an openness to change not only your thinking about where you think you're headed, but an openness to where the next possibility could lead you. Okay, Madeline, you were ready to come off mute. I saw you come off mute. So tell us, what are your nuggets of wisdom?
I'm actually so ready to talk about this because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. So I'm in my 30s and I think about a lot of things that I wish I had done a lot differently in my 20s. And obviously you can't go back, you can only go forward, but you can take what you learned in the past and apply that to the future. So I'm trying not to dwell too much on like regret and just turn it into more like learning situations and how can I do a little bit better in the future and what can you all learn from what I've learned from my past 10 years. So I've my first piece of advice is just talk to everybody. And what I mean by that is you never know what you're going to learn from another person. So I've been trying to make a little bit of a career switch for myself, still in the sciences, but a little something different than I've been doing. And I started setting up networking meetings for myself with different people at the company because what I've learned is I work in quality control, which is only a small part of the pharmaceutical industry. There's actually 100, 200, 300, probably even more different types of job you can have in the pharmaceutical company. But because I didn't know what I didn't know those options were available to me. So I started just reaching out, learning a lot from different people. And I've learned an astounding amount in the past 6 months just by having these little meetings. And it's really hard because it's uncomfortable. You have to reach out to people you don't know. You have to talk about things you don't know about. You have to be vulnerable. But it's really rewarding. Like there would be times where I had this meeting scheduled and we'd be getting closer and closer to the meeting. And I'd be like, I really don't want to do this. Why did I keep scheduling these meetings for myself? I'd go to the meeting and be like, wow, I learned so much from this person. This was really inspiring. And then I'd be like reinvigorated to keep pushing myself. So talk to everybody. You never know what you're going to learn, who's going to help you, and where you can help other people, because it's a give and take for sure. Okay. Next thing is don't let people tell you what you want. Like just because someone else wants that for them doesn't mean that's what you want. So I have a couple examples of this. One is one of the main reasons I chose Skidmore was because of the riding team. Like I knew I wanted to do horses in college. I visited probably 20 schools. I visited a barn and a school every time. So I knew that I really wanted horses to be a part of my college experience, and Skidmore was the perfect fit for me. So I really went with my gut, and it really turned out well for me in that situation. A situation where I wish I had done what I wanted and not what someone else wanted me to do was when I was applying to jobs after graduate school. I was trying to get back into Regeneron, and I had someone who I used to work with helping me like search the job market, network for me a little bit. And I found this one job that I was interested in applying to. And he was like, no, I don't think you want that position. They're different kind of scientists, not what you're used to. And I just wanted all the help I could get. I was really nervous about the job market. So I just accepted everything he told me and thought, yeah, okay, if he tells me it's not the right job for me, it's not the right job for me. Definitely the wrong move. That would have actually been a job I would have really enjoyed. And I wish I had gone for it. But because he told me not to, I just accepted that instead of fighting for what I actually thought I really wanted. And then that goes along with don't do what you should do, or don't do what you think you should do. Do what you want to do. Like I went to graduate school. I heard Adam, you talking about you dropped out of your PhD program. Sometimes I wish I dropped out of my PhD program. Even though I finished, sometimes I still wish I dropped out because there's just different opportunities you can get with and without the degree. But I went to graduate school because my friends were going to graduate school. I was young. I thought you needed to. And this goes back to talking to everybody. Like graduate school is gonna be a decision you're gonna have to make in your career, whether to do it, whether to not. Talk to people and find out, does their job require graduate school? Does it not? Because there's a lot of jobs in the sciences that don't require a graduate degree. Find out what those jobs are if graduate school isn't for you. And you can be quite successful without an advanced degree as well. And I would say the big thing that I've definitely implemented, and this will be my last one, I promise. The big thing I've definitely implemented in my new decade is to be gentle with myself. Like, I was very hard on myself in my 20s. Nothing I ever did was good enough. But that's just not true. You have to trust yourself, trust the decisions you make. Not every day is going to be perfect. In fact, no day is going to be perfect, but it doesn't mean there aren't good parts of that day. And if you're like me and are mad at some of the decisions you made in the past, just remember that you were a different person when you made those decisions, and you made those decisions for a reason. That's it.